Today, I want to tell the story of my very first paranormal experience. I've had a few things happen in my life that I can't explain, that I can't find a logical explanation for, that I can't really explain anything about. And while I'm somebody I tend to believe in the paranormal, in spirits, but I am also a skeptic in that I don't believe that everything can be or is paranormal. I believe that there can be a organic, earthly explanation that exists within our frame, I guess. So I want to tell you the story of the very first experience. And first of all, it's important to note that as a child, I was a very self-conscious, nervous kid. But I was fearless. Something I learned growing up with having anxiety or any kind of anxiety disorder is that if I give in to fear, I will never do anything. I will just sit and do nothing, experience nothing. All the highs and the lows are what's important in life. If you don't go to lows, you'll never know how to enjoy the highs. So I learned to be fearless. And in many ways, being more fearless than others who didn't understand the workings of an anxious mind. So my mind was always working, and I had a very creative, imaginative mind. So I was always creating those monsters in the shadows in my mind. They were always there. It was very easy to imagine such things. This story could be explained by an over-imagination of a child. I think I was 9 or 10 years old, and as happened often, our school was going on a school trip, and at the time we were learning about the Tudors in our history class, and the teacher took us to a Tudor manor house called Llancaerth Vawr Manor, which is a Tudor manor house in the Rhymney Valley in South Wales. And I think it must have been about a 2-hour bus ride from our school. And of course, as a kid, you don't notice the time. It's just fun, and you always make sure to sit at the back of the bus while idiot boys bang on the windows and signal to other drivers in other cars, mainly lorry drivers, to beep their horns and then turn to a coachload of old ladies and stick their middle fingers up at them while they bellow wildly at their childish antics, and all the girls roll their eyes because it wasn't really funny. But we arrived, and for basically city kids, this was a place out in a village. It was quiet. It was in the countryside. The only time you ever really visited these places was in school trips. And I remember that on the front lawn there were peacocks, real live peacocks, and they were just off the path, and there was no gate or anything. It was like the weirdest thing for my mind at that time, to walk down this crooked, stony path, uneven and weather-worn. Lord only knows when that stone path was set, but it wasn't yesterday. and come almost face to face and within touching distance of these strange, comical looking birds that were bigger than any bird I'd ever seen in the flesh. And as I got over the marvel of these odd creatures, we went in to the house. Now, Lancashire Manor has long since fallen out of hands for any one family. It was once owned by a Colonel Edward Pritchard, who in 1642, when Parliament declared war on King Charles I, he was appointed Commissioner of Array to the King, and he was responsible for raising men and money for the Loyalist cause in Glamorganshire. Although, as so often a common tale during the Civil War, it pitched family against family. His wife Mary was the sister of Bussy Mansell, a zealous parliamentarian. But after the house fell into disrepair, as with most of these houses, it was done up and it was given to view by the public. So people upkept it, and people would pay to visit it, and you could go and see what life in a real, working, breathing Tudor manor house was like. So it was perfect for a school who was learning about. While I was, yes, a nervous child, and yes, I was very nervous, I didn't cry too easily. I grew up with brothers. I knew how to fight and stand my ground. I wasn't afraid in that way. I've never been a crier. I've never been. If I cry, it's because I need to, as something is wrong. So the first place that we went was into the kitchen. And immediately it was so different from any kitchen I'd ever seen. We are used to modern kitchens, or modern kitchens for the 90s, which I guess aren't really any different to today, but with more modern appliances and more up-to-date decoration. But this was different. Herbs hanging over a wooden table in the middle of the room. It was a manor house, but it was small. There was barely any room to walk around the table. And at the end of the room, there was a little door that went down into a cellar, I guess. And I was stood just in front of that cellar, and I think the door was green and it was old. But I just didn't like it. I didn't want to stand there. I tried to move, but nobody was moving, and the woman was speaking. She was showing everyone how to make a candle out of wax, because that was what they made candles out of, wax. And everybody was making candles out of wax. And there was just something niggling at me. I was trying to fold the honey. It was in like a long strip, and it smelled of wax. And you rolled it up. You had the wick. This like clumsy. It looked like a bit of shoelace, sneaker lace. And eventually everyone did their candle, and they took it with them. And we went upstairs. Everything seemed fine. I didn't like that door, but you could put that down to overthinking. There's a door behind me. I'm turned away from it. Maybe I was overconscious and overthinking. So I put the door out of my mind, and we ascended the stairs. First of all, the first floor, and there was these portraits on the walls. And you know when people say that the eyes follow you? Yes, a weird feeling. You think it's just an expression, but it's not. It's an actual feeling. Now, I don't know if it's a real thing, if the eyes actually do follow you around, or if it's just another facet of the over-anxious mind that has heard that saying too many times, and these faces on the walls of these long since gone people, these people who once walked those steps that you are walking long, long ago, that they're just still there, ever present, their faces encapsulated on the walls, imprinted in the moment. And you're invading their space and somehow you're feeling odd. But we went into a room, and we didn't go to every room. We went into one room, and it had a bed, a 4-poster wooden bed. And it was the smallest bed I ever seen. It was tiny. I remember looking at it and thinking, I'd never fit on that. And it was an adult bed. It was a very small bed. And there was a cradle, a wooden cradle. And every moment, all throughout her little speech about the history of the room and who slept in it and who didn't, what occurred, what might happen, she never once said a word about any ghostly apparitions. There was no talk of ghosts. There was nothing. We were talking about the past, but we talked about the past in history. I never was afraid of it. I've always loved history, fascinated by history. It made no sense that I suddenly started feeling odd. Something didn't feel right. There was something wrong. I still can't explain it, so I couldn't have explained it then. But I kept looking at the cradle, and I kept expecting it to move. I kept darting my eyes to that cradle, almost at the other side of the room from where we were standing, and she was speaking. And the teacher was looking at the woman, explaining, teaching, whatever she was doing, learning, reciting her script, I don't know. But that cradle, I don't know. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it's like when you see a rocking chair and just there's something about you that it's so ingrained in something, like in our culture, maybe in our society, horror movies, and certain things attached to certain objects like rocking chairs, like they move alone when no one's sitting in them. It's like something that is in our books, our films. It's something that's frightening. It's supposed to be a cozy thing, but it's frightening to think about because you expect it and you're expecting it. But the cradle is something that's supposed to be soft and sweet. It's a baby. A baby goes in a cradle. But it didn't feel right. Nothing felt right. And we went up, and as we kept ascending higher up the stairs, the feeling that something was wrong, that something didn't sit right with me, kept getting more and more intense. I've never had this feeling before. It's strange, and it's so weird because it just kept intensifying, and it kept growing until, quite out of character for me, I burst into tears. No reason. Walking up the stairs, overwhelmed by something that I couldn't explain, I couldn't understand, I couldn't logic with my mind. I burst into tears right there on the stairs in front of everyone, and I was embarrassed because I don't cry in front of people. I certainly wouldn't have done it then. Something happened and I just couldn't stop crying. But in the years since that has happened, as I've grown, I realized something. None of the people who worked there, who took me away from the rest of the group, none of them were surprised. None of them were shocked. None of them. None of them were like, shit, why is this kid crying? None of them. And only now do I think that. I was thinking that a couple of weeks ago. Why didn't they do that? I would think that. Unless it had happened many times before. So that was the end of my Llancairthfell Manor journey. I was taken and we didn't go back into the house. And it left. The feeling left. It was gone. I didn't feel it and I have never felt it since. I can't explain it. An overwhelming sense of... not even dread. It wasn't dread. It was something else. And my friends, the whole class, came back and they were like, are you okay? What were you doing? I don't know. I can't explain it. I couldn't. So we got on the bus, taking with us that candle as a souvenir. I gotta tell you, I did not want that candle anywhere near me. When I got home, I stood in the middle of our garden and I threw that candle. I don't know where it landed, and quite frankly, I don't care. I did not want it anywhere near me. 2 years later, my brother went. He was fine, but he brought home the candle. I did not like that candle. I did not like it. I took the candle and I threw it. Same way as I did mine. Those candles don't exist anymore. Something happened to them. Someone went into their garden one morning and discovered a wax candle. There we are, a gift. This is a story that always sticks with me because it was something that troubled me. I'd never felt these things before and I hadn't felt them since. Some years later, I was about 20. There was a Welsh program on, and the presenter would go to different haunted locations in Wales. And one episode, he went to Llancairthfell Manor. Now, as an 8 or 9 year old kid, I didn't hear these stories. I didn't hear about them. I didn't know the stories. I didn't know this place was haunted. To me, it was an old place. It was old. But so was my grandparents' house, and I was fine there. I remember that my grandfather took me to my great-grandmother's house, and I was even older, and I was fine there. Even when people say it's haunted, I was fine there. There was nothing wrong there. Even when the year after our trip to Llancairthfell Manor, they took us down a pit, a coal mine. I was fine doing that. And they even made us turn our lights off so we stood in the pitch black and we couldn't see our hands in front of us. And men had died down that pit. I was fine then. I was okay. It was kind of fun. It didn't make sense. But this show just gave a little glimpse of all the stories of the ghosts. The many ghosts. So he stays the night in this haunted manor house. Suddenly I'm finding out that it's haunted and there's stories of of ghosts, the stories of guests feeling the same things. A couple of years after that, Most Haunted did a special in Llancairthval Manor, and they went into the room we went into with the cradle. And the woman, what did she say? It moves. It moves backwards and forth on its own. It creeped me the hell out because that's what I was expecting it to do. That's what I was afraid of. That's what it felt like. And there's this woman on the TV telling me that cradle moves. Unseen hands move it back and forth. The door in the kitchen that I was uneasy about, that had a story too. And the stairs that made me uneasy the more we went up is supposedly haunted by Colonel Edward Pritchard himself, an imposing, terrifying figure. So that is my very first encounter with some unexplained. Until next time, sleep well. See ya.